Hi, my name is Ashley Gamlin, and I chose to do my Think Aloud on the story Stone Fox by John Reynolds Gardner, illustrated by Marcia Sewall. During this time, I'm going to be talking about what's going on in my head while I'm reading the story, and I will be demonstrating how I do that. The first thing I do when reading a story is I check out the title and I look at the illustrations on the cover and I try to think about what this story is going to be about. So the title Stone Fox stood out to me right away, and not in a way that relates to what the story is going to be about, but I've also read a story called Stone Soup, and that's one of my favorites. So that just like made a quick connection for me, although I know that the stories are not related. I also connect to the illustration. I also have a dog, and so I see a boy and his dog, and the dog looks like it's holding a leash and like they're about to go on a walk, which is something that I would normally do at home as well. The thing I'm questioning a little bit is where does Stone Fox fit in? I don't see a fox in illustration. I've never heard the term stone fox. So I know that I'm going to have to read on and figure out where is this title coming from. I'm also going to make a logical inference about the illustration and the type of story it's going to be. Um, because it's an illustration and not a real photograph, this story makes me feel like it's going to be a fictional story, but there's also real looking aspects in the illustration, like the dog and a boy, and there's usually trees and a house. So I might categorize this story as realistic fiction. Upon reading the page three, I had a few things going on while I was reading this. The potato farm really stood out to me because there's a potato plant in Grand Forks, so I was making some connections there. I had some questioning going on. Why is Grandpa sad? Maybe he's sick. I identified the importance, I was determining the importance of our character, Willie, putting a name to the face that I saw on the front page. And so I know that he's the main character, and that's a really important part, is knowing his name. I also did some visualizing. There's a funny part where it talks about the grandfather dressing up like a scarecrow, and Willie didn't notice it, and I could see that happening, visualizing it. The grandfather standing right in front of Willie and him not even knowing it, and I thought that was pretty funny. On page four, I made some more connections to the grandfather getting up really early all the time. I know my grandparents always did that as well, so I had made a connection. He also told another story about when his food got eaten by all the chickens, and I could visualize him going into the chicken coop and seeing his empty plate and kind of learning a hard lesson with that. Um, I made another logical inference during this part as well. I don't think the grandfather is playing this time when he's not getting up. I think he's really sick if he can't get out of bed. And the reason why I say that is because the boy is even able to run out of the house and the grandfather's still laying there. And that kind of makes it more serious and not so funny. On page five, we meet Searchlight, the boy's dog, and at first I was like, Searchlight? That's a weird name. So I really had to think about that. And then I was thinking about the kind of dog Searchlight is. Maybe it's a kind of border collie, or because with the white on him, that's what I thought of. So just making a connection there and thinking about what type of dog he really is. Another thing that really stood out to me on this page is my visualizing and how it changed. The first thing I thought about when the author starts describing the Doc Smith character, um, he describes white hair and and then it says a long dress. And I originally thought that Doc Smith was a man. But it turns out that it moves on to saying the character was wearing a dress and her skin was tan and her face was covered with wrinkles. So now I know she's old and a woman. When originally when I saw the name Doc Smith, I thought it was a man. So kind of showing how I had to change my visualizing while I was reading. On page 6, I looked at the illustration and I see that it's the time when the boy and Searchlight are coming running to get the doctor's help. And I had to change my visualization again because when the author described the doctor and I finally realized it was a woman, I was visualizing short hair for some reason, but now I see that it is longer hair that's tied back in a bun. So now I am seeing this character while I continue to read. On page 7, I do some elaborative inferring because I think the doctor's surprised that he didn't play music because that's probably something the grandfather always does. And when you're sick, you don't do those things that you normally do. There's another part that really stood out to me on this page, and I had to do some monitoring and checking for myself. The sentence said, "Hitch up Rex for me." And at first I was like, Rex? Who is Rex? The author didn't even introduce this person. So I figured before I moved on, I would go back again. And I read again, "Hitch up Rex for me." So when I read that again, I automatically realized, oh, it's a horse because you usually hitch a horse up. And then if I would have read further before that, it says Rex was Doc Smith's horse. So that solidified that character for me even more. On the next page, it shows the illustration with the grandfather and all the characters, and it really shows the grandfather does not feel well and that he is not playing. And in the text on page 9, I made some inferences thinking that maybe Willie is bothering the doctor a little bit, and not in a bad way, but I think that this is serious and the doctor's trying to focus, and Willie was asking way too many questions. On page 10, we learn that there's really nothing wrong with the grandfather. She even refers to him as being healthy as an ox, which is something that I've heard before in my background knowledge. But then I start questioning, well, if he's healthy, why is the grandpa giving up on life? On this last page, I'm doing some feeling. I feel Willie's sadness and maybe that he's scared and kind of putting myself in that situation and how I would feel and kind of inferring a little bit on what is going on maybe in Willie's mind and how he's feeling. So some final thoughts I have after reading all of that, and it's nice to kind of synthesize all that information from the chapter and then think about predictions moving forward. Right now I'm analyzing the author's choice in how he wrote the story, and to make it interesting, I think it makes me really want to know what's going to happen next. What's wrong with Grandpa? Why is he sick? And I'm still wondering, why is this called Stone Fox? All these things are going through my head as a reader, and it's actually making me want to read more than if the author were to give me all these answers right away. So I'm kind of analyzing that part and what authors do to get readers interested. And I really enjoyed this story, and I felt like I really was able to connect to the story as well. So I would be excited to read more.